Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Cindy Goldrich with me. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you.
I am really excited about this conversation because Cindy has lots and lots of training, experience, and like mileage on helping teens and young adults, kids, teens, and young adults with
Yep, all of them.
ADHD. And so I'm going to let you kind of tell people about yourself and the work that you do because it's quite broad. And then we'll talk some more about like what people need to know.
Absolutely. And I'll give you the condensed version. So, my background is I'm a mental health counselor, but I'm also a board certified ADHD coach, meaning I've done the real learning coursework on the social and emotional impact that ADHD and executive function challenges have on learning, motivation, behavior, and the whole family system, because we know it's none of it's just in a vacuum. I started working with the kids, but I quickly found the parents don't know what the parents don't know. I wasn't always getting very far with the kids. So almost 20 years ago, I developed one of the first ADHD parent coaching programs. It's called Calm and Connected, Parenting Kids and Teens with ADHD, which coaches parents. And then that was so successful. So people started asking me, can I do that work? So I now have the ADHD Parent Coach Academy where I train people worldwide to be parent coaches. And then I started going to the school districts because the teachers didn't know what the teachers didn't know. And by the way, my daughter's a teacher. I have every respect for teachers, but it's not in their training to understand ADHD and executive function. Most parents don't realize that. They go to the teachers for this support. Teachers didn't learn it. So I travel the country, I go into school districts and I train the teachers. And I also now have my ADHD Teacher Trainer Academy where educators and others, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, all sorts of people come to train so that they can go into their communities and go in and do teacher training in their districts. You don't have to be a teacher to do this because I'm not teaching curriculum, I'm teaching about ADHD and executive functions. So that's the work. I do have coaches who coach parents and teens and college kids and adults.
It's so good. Okay. And so let's kind of define some terms here, which
Sure.
is what is, in a nutshell, because we could do like a 15-week class on both of these terms. What are executive function or executive function challenges? And what is ADHD?
So let's start with the first. And it's so funny you worded it that way because I remember, and again, I go back a long time. I remember being at a professional conference in 2008 where the keynote speaker, Sam Goldstein, did 45 minutes on should we call this executive function, executive functioning, or executive functions? We still have not all agreed.
No, and in fact, sometimes we call it executive dysfunction. So
Right.
like there's this whole the terminology matters and it's rough. Even with and now we've settled mostly, I feel like, on ADHD instead of ADD or
Well, I'll give you the tidbit on that one too. So staying with the executive function, Um, one thing parents need to really know is you cannot be diagnosed with executive dysfunction. We can assess it, we can acknowledge it, we can remediate it, but it is not in the DSM, that means the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So it is not a diagnosis, it's a description. So what is executive function? I could give you the long answer, but the short answer is it's how you do what you intend to do. So here's how I explain it. Here's your brain. Back of the brain where the emotions are, front of the brain where the prefrontal cortex is, and that's where your executive function system is. Brain develops from the back to the front. So this is developmental. So your executive function system is developing. But we know now, and I say this definitively, and this was a work in progress for years, if you have ADHD, by definition, you're going to have challenges in your executive function system. The opposite's not true. If you have challenges in executive function, that doesn't mean you have ADHD. But executive functions, things like your processing speed, your working memory, your ability to get started without undue procrastination, your emotional regulation, your planning, your organizing, your self-talk. I just threw a lot of words at everyone. So you'll play it again on repeat. But yeah, those are your executive functions, right? Flexibility, the ability to be flexible. These are all have to do with how you do what you intend to do. They have nothing to do with your intelligence.
Thank you for saying that. And I want you to say that again, please.
Absolutely. You could have the highest IQ in the grade and the weakest executive function system. I'll mention one. Let's think about processing speed. The ability to what you hear and how you integrate it into what you know, what you see and how you process that, how you act in terms of motor planning. You could have the slowest processing speed and be the most highly intelligent person in the room. So don't mistake someone with that they need to think about it because they're not so sure. They're just processing slowly.
This is really important because, and you can elaborate on this, but one of the reasons this is extremely important is because we value speed. We want people to answer quickly and
Yes, we do.
correctly all the time. And we assume that if you're not answering quickly, that it means you're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
We literally like kind of walk around operationally assuming that, even if we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
And so from a like an education culture perspective,
Mm-hmm.
this is very much woven into the fabric, yeah?
Yeah. So I'm going to even nail it more.
Mm.
There is an article, and everyone can look on my website, which is ptscoaching.com, stands for Pathways to Success, because this is their pathway, right? Called How Fast is Smart. And it talks exactly about this issue. When I go into school districts and I teach teachers, I say the same thing to every group. We need to stop these math drills because all they're doing is stressing kids out. And the reason I went like that, this is the cognitive space you have to do what you need to do. If I'm under stress, look at the amount of cognitive space I have.
And you're just for the listeners, you're collapsing your hands into each other to make a very small space versus a very expansive space. And
I think of a balloon. We want to help keep that balloon inflated because every time we're putting pressure on it, we're pushing some of the air out of that balloon. And now the kid can't operate. So there is no relationship between speed and intelligence.
oof, it's such a key point. And talk about a little bit the relationship between, let's just do this right now, like intelligence and ADHD.
Okay. So I don't know statistics. I know my experience. In general, people with ADHD tend to be highly intelligent, right? They may even be in that, and I hate this word, the gifted category, the twice exceptional category, where they've got ADHD, highly intelligent, and they've got challenges, right? They are mistaken for lazy, unmotivated, uncaring, slow, right? But it's because there is so much going on and their processing speed may be weaker. Their working memory may be weaker. Things that help someone do what they intend to do, right? May be impaired.
So this you're teeing this up so beautifully because before we hit record, I said, what do people most need to know that they don't know? And this includes parents, caregivers, teachers, whoever's involved with
Right.
complicated kids, as we call them around here. And you said, what did you say?
I said kids do well if they can, which for anyone out there who's familiar with the work of Ross Greene or Stuart Ablon, that's going to sound very familiar. But we need to really take that to heart because one of the biggest hacks, and I can go conclusion and then back it up, one of the biggest hacks I have for parents is wonder why, right? Like when your kid doesn't do what you expect them to do before you get it, like I'll give you the perfect example. Hey, Johnny, do me a favor, go upstairs, get your backpack, your shoes, your tennis racket. On the way down, could you grab my water bottle and see if I shut my light off? Now, forgetting the fact that the kid is probably overwhelmed, put that on the side. When the kid comes down with nothing, what is the emotion of the parent usually?
Oh, frustrated and aggravated.
Exactly. Why isn't he listening? Why, if he wanted to, he would, he could,
Yeah.
right? So now, if instead of going into that emotional reaction, I say, hey, I wonder why. Why didn't Johnny come down? I wonder what's going on there.
Mhm.
Now I go into problem solving. And if I notice, this is the bonus, ready? If I notice this is a pattern of behavior, then I have the gold because then I can step back and say, huh, he always or she never. I wonder if we can solve this systemically by working on this when things are calm and this problem is not happening right now.
I love what you're saying here, and I am 100% on board. And this is why you and I have jobs, is because when you're in that moment, and so if you're listening to this and you're like, I just want this to stop,
Right, right.
yes, we do want it to stop. And the way that we get it to stop is not by continuing to bang our heads against a brick wall, right? In other words, if you've repeated this same experiment
Yep.
many, many times and you're not getting ahead, the problem is not with your child. The problem is in the way that we're interacting here. There's something about the system that
Yeah.
needs to change. And what I like to tell parents, I suspect you tell them too, is we are the owners of a fully developed brains in the
Yep.
interaction. And so that means, as inconvenient as it is, and it's inconvenient sometimes, that means that it's the responsibility's on us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. You know, last night I was doing a session on my Common Connected workshop series. And it was the first session. So, they haven't really learned all the gems I want to teach them and everything. And I just sort of asked, like, what are some of the issues that are bringing you here? And one father said, screens. I don't know what to do about those screens. I think he's addicted. And I said, okay, well, we're not necessarily going to talk about the screen part of the issue, but let's talk about it. He's like, yeah, I don't know whether I should just be taking it away or what I should do. I said, well, we're going to deal with consequences in session 6. We have a lot we're going to learn before then. We got a lot we got to do before then. Because if you think you're going to just magically make this stop, that would be like asking a chain smoker to quit like that with no tools. One of the biggest issues with people wanting to quit smoking is they don't know what to do with their hands in social settings.
Yep.
It's like because they're so used to having that thing that in their hands. So you can't just expect them to stop without dealing with that. It's the same thing. Any pattern you are looking at with your kid that is driving you crazy, their room is a mess, they're late for the bus. You can't just punish them and say, well, or incentivize them. You can't say, hey, I'm going to give you a car if you clean up your room 5 days this week.
Yeah, and we're sitting here laughing, but that has happened.
I know.
It's so funny that you mentioned the consequences because in my Raising Orchid Kids class that I lead with my colleague Jen Dreyer, we don't get to consequences until 7 out of 8 sessions.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's like, and it's funny because I had a father once say to me, and he was a really tough, like he came in like his wife was dragging him to this workshop, right? He was like, I don't need this. I'm strict and the kid listens to me. And I suddenly am like, well, how's that relationship with that kid? Right? Because we know that that's a lot of the trauma. That's a lot of the trauma of usually the fathers, but not always the fathers coming in because their parent kind of beat the ADHD out of them, right? By being so strict and everything else. So they're like, see, I'm doing well. I'm like, how's your relationship with your parents? It's like, well, we don't talk. I'm like, is that what you're wanting with yours? So he was this really tough parent coming in. We got to session 5. And remember, I said consequences we do in session 6. We got to session 5, and he said, by the way, I'm not going to do that consequences session anymore. He said, I have such a good relationship with my kid now. We actually play and we laugh because he had been taking to heart all of the lessons and all of the connections and all the things we were doing. So that's the hope out there for your audience to say, I'm not saying we don't need boundaries. We need boundaries because they're going to push the limits. But
And
we
that's their job.
that is their job. What's the job of a teenager if I say black?
Automatically white.
That's it.
Yeah,
Because their job is to see themselves as a separate person from you.
that's
So
right.
we want to cheer that on, but we still got to work with it.
It's so complicated. I mean, people on this podcast have heard me say this over and over. Like, parenting my teenage and young adult children has been the most difficult stage of parenting because of this issue. I want them. I started parenting for the long game. Like, I want you out of my house. I want you to have a job. I want you to have
Yeah,
your own family and your own life. And part of that means that I have to deal with my own pain of that happening.
that's right. Oh, that's so true. But I will tell you the gift on the other side.
Mm.
I'm now a grandma. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and my daughter's due in a few weeks. But this is why I mention this. So interesting because your parenting doesn't stop, it just shifts. And seeing your own child parent and have light bulbs go on for them. Oh, that's why you were asking me to do this, and that's why you wanted this. Like, yes, honey. You know what I mean? It's just really cool.
Mm. Okay, so when parents come to you, clearly when they come to me also, they think that the problem is my kid forgot his fifth jacket on the playground, or they're failing math, or their water bottle. This is the 26th water bottle we've bought in the first 8 weeks of school. What's just like let's refine this even more. What is actually going on? Do
Mhm.
they intend to do these things? And how does that answer? How does your answer? How is it going to fit with they do well when they can?
Yeah. So if a kid is being honest, and by honest, I mean they have the space and the trust that they can be honest, right? I'm not going to say kids don't lie, but sometimes I'll talk about that in a second. They're just as frustrated.
Yes.
Like, you think I wanted to have to go look for my water bottle again? You think I don't care? You think I just assume that you're just going to buy me another water bottle? I know you're going to give me a hard time about that water bottle. It's just so many reasons, right? Maybe they got distracted because, hey, this is part of that. And by the way, I just want to go back to something. I'll be back here. The questions you asked me at the beginning were a definition of ADHD,
Oh
and you
man.
mentioned sometimes ADD. It is all ADHD, according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. I know you know that, but I just want to clarify that for your audience. In 1987, it all switched over from ADD to ADHD. So if you're still calling it ADD, it hasn't been that for a long time. The name of this disorder makes absolutely no sense. I don't think of this as a disorder. I do think we need to recognize that it is a disorder and that, all of that. I'm not saying, hey, it's not a disorder, but what I mean is it's a difference with real challenges,
Yeah.
right? There's no question. But it's also not a deficit.
Yeah.
It's not attention deficit. So to get back to where you were, it's not because they just forgot and they just weren't thinking about it. It's attention regulation.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hard time regulating what they're paying attention to. So it's funny. I will admit I now play pickleball. Never thought I'd be saying that. But on the exit door of the pickleball place that I play, there is a big sign, maybe because it's a lot of people my age, there's a big sign that says, did you remember your water bottle? Did you remember your jacket? And it mentions like 5 or 6 things, right? Forgetting happens. We need systems. We really do. But forgetting for these kids happens more often because A, they did get distracted. B, their mind is overloaded. Maybe their working memory is weaker, so they were so focused on, I got to do this, that they just didn't hold on to that one in their head, right? There could be lots of reasons. The thing is, like I said, recognize the pattern and then let's problem solve around it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, to your point, even the pickleball court, which is not for, only for people with ADHD, they have a checklist on their door. Why do they have that? Because everybody needs a check.
Forgetting happens.
Yeah.
Forgetting happens.
And I do think, like, shout out to parents who are like, yeah, and forgetting happens all the time, every day, multiple times a day at my house. And like full support for the level of frustration that you feel when that happens. But
Absolutely.
and also, I'm a both and kind of person. Like, think about the level of frustration that's occurring with your child to whom that has actually happened. Like, it
Exactly.
wasn't your water bottle that you lost. I mean, maybe you did. By the way, pause. How many of the parents who come to you are either undiagnosed or diagnosed with ADHD when they arrive?
It is so fascinating to see that in front of my eyes. Very often, and again, it's changing as look, I've been doing this for 20 years, so the parents are getting younger. So now more of the parents that come to me are aware of their own ADHD.
Yep.
Maybe they've been diagnosed, but traditionally, I would say very often they weren't, especially the women.
Yes.
Women very often were diagnosed with anxiety or depression,
Yes.
whether that was self-identification or formal identification. They may have qualified for that ADHD diagnosis, but that wasn't on the radar. So when we acknowledge the ADHD, they'll say, wow, maybe I could have been or could have done all of those things had I realized it wasn't just that I was anxious. Maybe I was anxious because of the ADHD.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in front of my eyes, especially, when I do session one of Calm and Connected, it is a 2-hour deep dive into the social emotional impact of ADHD and executive function challenges. By the end of that, very often they'll ping me and they'll say, do you know anyone that does adult diagnosis? Because I'm beginning to think that maybe this is me.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is partially because I think it's really fascinating in as much for two reasons. One is I've been sort of playing with this notion for the past few years of our children come here to teach us what we most need to learn.
I love that. I
And
so agree.
and that mirror being held up. And also, excuse me, if we take the invitation, their being who they are has the capacity to help us heal who we are and really understand ourselves in a different way. And so I'm really interested by that. Like, oh, you have a diagnosis? Huh, that's interesting. I act the same way. And it is those things, the things about ourselves that we hate, that we don't want to own, that
Hmm.
we just wish were not there, that are the ones that are so aggravating when our kid keeps demonstrating them over and over and over again, and they can't, break out of it,
Right, right.
right? Because they would do well if they could, but they can't.
Exactly. Exactly. They can't in this moment.
Yeah.
And just because they could yesterday, don't be tricked into thinking that means they can. It means when all the stars are aligned in the same way, yep, they can.
Yeah. And that would be called performance inconsistency.
Absolutely.
And it's a thing.
Of course, it's a thing.
Oh my God.
Listen, it's a thing for me too, and I don't have ADHD.
Thank you. Say more about that, Cindy. What do you mean? What do you mean you're not performance consistent?
Absolutely. Um, played pickleball today, could not get myself to focus on the ball. I mean, balls that
Yep.
I couldn't do.
Yep.
But how do I extrapolate that into other aspects of life? You know what? There are some days there's just so much on my head. There are some days where I just didn't sleep really well. There's some days where, you know what, I ran out of the house before I had my really good salad for breakfast. There's some, I could go on and on and on. It's called being human. And we need to give ourselves a little grace.
And children are human. I think
Yeah,
this is the other piece we forget, right?
yeah,
Because they're little and they don't know as much as we do, and like blah, blah, blah. We children are not, number one, they're not little adults. Number two, they're not robots. Number three, they're not our possessions. Like, let's just go all
love
the
that.
way down.
Absolutely.
And so I love your point about like today I did not play good pickleball. Today I did not give a good presentation. Today I did not walk the 3 miles that I usually walk. I just didn't feel like it. I didn't
Right,
feel good enough to do it.
right,
So if, fortunately for me, I'm an adult. And if I don't walk the 3 miles, nobody's going to get on my case except maybe me. Right. Right.
yeah.
But when we have a 9-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 21-year-old who's still in college, somebody's going to get on their case about it.
Or how about the 26-year-old who's living back in the parents' house?
Ooh, yes.
I deal with a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of parents of kids who are not launched. Parents will call me up and they'll say, "What age do you coach?" I say, "Whatever age you need me to. If your kid is not launched, they're not launched. And that's okay. Even if they're living in their own apartment, but if you're supplementing their income, to me, they're not fully launched. Fully launched means they are independent, operating their own 100%.
And therefore, they have the skills to do that. Like, let's
Exactly.
always remember that they would do it if they could. And if they can't, there's a reason,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's, yeah. Okay, you and I could go all day. I love
I
that.
know.
We're going to pause here. If people want to learn more about you and your work and your books and your courses, and you have a gift for my listeners, tell
I
us
do.
all the things,
I
please.
do. I do. Well, I'm very excited and proud to say that the 8 keys to parenting kids and teens with ADHD. I don't know what day this podcast is launching. The book is launching February 17th. So, but it is available on Amazon for pre-order and everywhere else you buy your books. You don't have to get it at Amazon. I will be giving a gift to your audience. If you go to ptscoaching.com, remember that's Pathways to Success, ptscoaching.com/complicated. You will get the introductory chapter to the book. You will also get a parent wheel and a student wheel that will help you really understand the journey that you're on, and 7 of my top 10 parenting, tips and strategies. So a lot of really good support. So that's ptscoaching.com backslash 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 complicated. You can find me on all the channels, at PTS Coaching. And I have a new Substack, which I'm very excited about. And I'm forgetting the name of it, but just look at Cindy Goldrich. I do a lot of writing and I write a lot for educators, and parents and professionals, therapists, all of that. So a lot of really good content there.
Love it. Cindy Goldrich, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you. You're wonderful.